Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Lollipop and today we are finally doing a comparison video that I've been wanting to do and working on for a while now, and that is comparing the Marlin, Excalibur, and Roscoe lineups offered by Trek. At a first glance, these bikes seem to look pretty similar, so I completely understand that it may be confusing to figure out why certain bikes cost a lot more. I'm going to start by giving an overview on each of the lineups and what they're intended for, so you can get the general idea of which lineup is right for you, and then I will go over all the main differences between the Marlin 7, Excalibur 7, and Roscoe 6 after that, since these bikes are the closest in price to one another out of all the bikes. I'll also make a table at the end of this video showing you all the main differences in one place, so you can see it a little bit better. But before that, I'll go over each of the main component differences between these three bikes, like the cranksets or the suspension forks, to make it easier to decide as well. But before I begin, I do want to note that I'm only covering the men's versions of these bikes to make things simpler, but that won't affect anything I talk about since the women's versions still have the same frame specifications. And lastly, I'm only going to talk about the 2021 bikes in my comparison at the end, but if you do want to know what changed from 2020 to 2021 in any of these three lineups, I have made videos on all of them explaining those changes in detail, so I'll totally add those links in the description below. But starting with the Marlin series. These bikes are intended to be Trek's entry-level mountain bikes, so they are less expensive than the other two lineups, and are definitely a great way for beginners to learn the skills of mountain biking without spending a lot of money. They are classified on Trek's website as cross-country mountain bikes, which means they are more suited for long rides and work better on flatter terrain, though they can definitely deal with some twists and turns and obstacles, as I've proven in my trail riding videos. They have narrower tires than other mountain bike categories at 2.2 inches in width, which allows them to be faster as well. The Marlins can actually make pretty rugged commuter bikes and will do fine on the pavement if that is what your intention is, but in my opinion they are made more for the trails due to their bigger tires, wide handlebars, and other components. The Excalibur bikes are not too far off actually, since they are also cross-country mountain bikes, but they're designed to be even faster and more lightweight, and introduce riders to the world of cross-country or XC racing. They thus also have the same tire width as the Marlins. The Roscoe lineup is the different one. These bikes are for people who are looking to have a lot of fun on trails, since they all run on 27.5 plus size tires for better traction on trails when you're dealing with a lot of rough terrain and other obstacles. Their tires are all 2.8 inches wide for that extra grip, and though these bikes are heavier than all the other ones, they are not focused as much on speed, but rather the ability to go on basically any terrain you can find. Alright, now I'm going to talk a bit about pricing and frame geometry before we get into the actual comparison of the three bikes. I made a graph to show you where the prices of these three lineups overlap, just so you can see how expensive or inexpensive some of these bikes can be. The blue represents the least expensive bike in each respective lineup, while the purple represents the most expensive bike. The Marlin 4 is the least expensive out of all of these bikes, coming in at $490, while the most expensive bike is the Roscoe 8, which is $1,790. The Marlin bikes, like I mentioned, will be the most friendly for your wallet, while the other two lineups generally have similar pricing, though the Roscoes are a bit more expensive, which is due to some extra parts they have like the dropper posts. And before I start getting into frame geometry, I will note that the bikes in their respective lineups share the same frame. So the Roscoe 6 has the same frame as the Roscoe 8, and the Marlin 5 has the same frame as the Marlin 6, and so on, but these frames actually do differ between the lineups. Since the Marlin and Excalibur bikes are both cross-country bikes, their frames are actually very similar, and according to Trek specifications on their website, some measurements do differ slightly, but only in certain frame sizes. The main difference I'm noticing is the wheelbase, which is longer in the Excalibur bikes in the 29-inch wheel sizes. This should definitely make the Excalibur feel slightly more stable and comfortable, but in all honesty, these frames do not have a crazy amount of differences. The other main difference is that the Excaliburs have tapered head tubes, while the Marlins do not. This allows the suspension fork to be upgraded if you want a higher end fork, and it also provides added stiffness to the bike. Now the Roscoe frame is actually very different from the other two since it is not a cross-country bike. Many of the specifications on this frame are different, but all of them are aimed at making the bike more playful, nimble, and just easier to maneuver, and thus less focused on speed and racing. This allows the Roscoe to feel at home on really rough terrain or on jumps, and basically any terrain you want to go on. Additionally, this frame also has a tapered head tube. So overall, the Marlin bikes are beginner cross-country mountain bikes designed for either a beginner mountain biker on a budget, or just someone who wants a more rugged commuter bike than a road or hybrid bike. The Excalibur is also a cross-country bike, but more intended for riders who want to get into XC racing, or for those who want a lighter and faster bike than the Marlins. The Roscoes are for people less worried about being fast, and for those who want to have a really capable bike that can handle almost anything you'll throw at it. I will also quickly note that none of the Marlin bikes come with tubeless-ready rims or tires, while all the Roscoe and Excalibur bikes come with tubeless-ready rims. However, only the Roscoe 7 and 8 come with the full setup that includes tubeless-ready rims and tires. Now let's finally get into the comparison between the three bikes. I'm going to start by talking about the similarities between these three bikes first, so you can see how much overlap there actually is. The only components that are shared between these bikes are the Bontrager Arvada seat, the Shimano MT200 hydraulic disc brakes, the Shimano RT26 brake rotors, the grips, and actually almost the entire Shimano Dior 1x10 drivetrain, with the exception of the crankset and bottom bracket. I won't go into all the details on these components since if you buy any of these three bikes, you'll get these no matter which one you choose. Now let's get into the differences. Starting with the price, the 2021 Marlin 7 comes in at $840, while the Excalibur 7 costs a bit more at $1,020, and the Roscoe 6 is the most expensive at $1,050. I already covered the frame geometry, but I will mention that the Marlin bikes use Trek's Alpha Silver aluminum, while the Roscoe and Excalibur bikes use the Alpha Gold aluminum, which just has smoother welds, is lighter in weight, and is a bit stronger. The suspension forks are also different between these bikes, with the Marlin and Excalibur both using a RockShox Judy fork with 100mm of travel and a quick release axle, but the Marlin has a coil fork version while the Excalibur has an air fork which is lighter and more adjustable. The Roscoe uses an SR Suntour XCM32 with 120mm of travel to better absorb those big bumps on the trail, and it has a through axle instead of a quick release axle, and boost spacing for added stiffness and stability. The rims are all different as well, with the Marlin 7 using the Bontrager Connection rims, which are more entry level and are 20mm wide, while the Excalibur upgrades to the Bontrager Covey rims that are tubeless ready, weigh less, and are 23mm wide, while the Roscoe uses tubeless ready Alex MD35 rims, which are much wider at 35mm to accommodate those wider tires. And speaking of the tires, the Marlin and Excalibur both use the same tires, which are the Bontrager XR2 comp tires that are 2.2 inches wide. The Roscoe uses Kenda Havoc tires that are 2.8 inches wide for that added grip and stability. All of these are wire bead tires and none of them are tubeless ready. The seat post is a notable difference between the bikes, but the Marlin and Excalibur use the same Bontrager alloy fixed post, while the Roscoe uses a JD dropper post with 130mm of travel, which is very helpful when going over rough terrain or on downhill portions, since you can move the seat out of the way to shift your weight more easily on the bike for better control. The handlebars are another change, but they're the same between the Marlin and Excalibur, which are 720mm wide and have a 5mm rise, while the Roscoe uses 750mm wide handlebars that have a 15mm rise for better control of the bike and a slightly less race-oriented position. The Roscoe also uses a different stem, which is shorter than the one on the other two bikes, and this allows the Roscoe to turn better, but it does sacrifice some pedaling efficiency and speed. Now, I mentioned before that the drivetrain is very similar between these bikes, since they all use a mainly Shimano Dior M4100 1x10 drivetrain, which is Shimano's entry drivetrain for serious mountain biking. The main difference, though, is between the cranksets, since the Marlin and Roscoe use the same FSA Alpha Drive 28-tooth boost crank, while the Excalibur uses a 30-tooth Shimano Dior M5100 boost crank. The 30 teeth on the Excalibur crank allows it to pedal more efficiently and a bit faster. And the final difference between these bikes is the weight, which is a pretty big one. The 2021 Marlin 7 weighs 13.77 kilograms or 30.35 pounds, while the Excalibur 7 weighs almost a pound less than that at 13.39 kilograms or 29.53 pounds, and the Roscoe weighs 4 pounds more at 15.81 kilograms or 34.86 pounds. These weight differences make sense since the Excalibur is more oriented towards racing and being lightweight, while the Roscoe has a lot of heavier components like the wider tires, rims, and the dropper post to make it more efficient for rougher terrain. To sum it all up, if you're looking into getting one of these three bikes and aren't sure which one, get the Marlin 7 if you are a beginner mountain biker looking to get a very well-equipped bike that will still work as you grow your skills, or just if you are on a budget since this one is much less expensive. Get the Excalibur if you know you are into cross-country riding and want to either get into racing or just want to be able to be fast and have a lighter bike. And then finally get the Roscoe if you want to be able to go on any terrain and have a lot of fun messing around on your bike, but you aren't too worried about your bike being the fastest on the trail or on the road, and you're okay with the added weight. But that is all for this video. If you enjoyed and this helped you out, please leave a like and subscribe, and leave a comment below if you noticed a mistake or have any questions or suggestions for me. But like always, thank you all so much for watching, and remember to keep biking.